drama Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead by Tom Stoppard, a drama in which purpose and human fate are questioned to the fictional extent. Born in 1937, Tom Stoppard lived a childhood of almost constant movement under the oppression of the Nazi Reich. With his Jewish heritage, him and his family were moved to Singapore. They lived there until the Japanese invaded. His mother took him and his siblings to India, while his doctored father remained behind to help but was later killed. In India, he was given a formal education until his mother married his stepfather, moving them to England. There, he attended school until the age of 17, where he decided to move on with his life. He began his literary career working as a reporter at 17, with dreams of becoming a wartime journalist, then as a theater critic, where he first found inspiration for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. He eventually began to write his own plays, going on to produce M is for the Moon, among other things, The Dissolution of Dominic Boot, Arcadia, and more. The drama itself was written in 1966. It was one of the first plays that Mr. Stoppard would receive praise for, being one of his better works in the eye of the critics. The drama centers around known Hamlet side characters, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, as they discuss fate and their actions as basic side characters to their own story. The play follows Rosencrantz and Guildenstern as the events of Hamlet play out. They are invited to England by the king to discover why Hamlet has been behaving so oddly. Hint, it's to throw his uncle, the King Claudius, off his rhythm so he can expose Claudius as his father's murderer. Being asked by the king to see Hamlet to England and beginning that journey only to realize the letter are to deliver to the king asks him to have Hamlet killed. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are all too late discover Hamlet has switched the letters and actually asks the king to kill Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Those that have read or seen Hamlet know that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern die at the end of the play, but this drama takes an interesting twist to an overarching story. Both Rosencrantz and Guildenstern find themselves with little memory of their lives before the play began. They are confused by the story of the original Hamlet playing out around them. Yet, when they encounter any of the main characters from Hamlet, the scene plays out exactly as it does in the original story. The lighting changes, their manner of speech changes from the fairly modern style of Stoppard's writing to Shakespeare's Old English. They were left to discover what they believe to be their own doing, or perhaps the doing of some other force that they have not yet conceived of. This creates tension between both Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, and those that they live with. While the duo are the main focus of this drama, other familiar characters find themselves at the same off-script time as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, leaving them with enough awareness to debate similar questions of fate. One of the more prominent characters is the player, an actor Rosencrantz and Guildenstern meet in the first act, who actually finds himself with an almost constant grasp on reality. He seems to be somewhat omniscient. He seems to know exactly who he is and what he should be doing. He doesn't question his role in the play because he knows he's an actor. He's aware he's part of a much bigger production, as he repeatedly compares living life to being an actor on the stage. The player then goes to become almost the antagonist of the story, as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern find themselves trying to face off against the fate already decided for them in the original story of Hamlet. They found this aggression on the player and his nonchalant attitude towards it, and the realities of the world causing them only further questioning on what is real and what is fake. Take for example when Guildenstern, in a fit of rage, tries to stab the player when he tells him how easy death is to act. Guildenstern sees this as his way of showing both the player and his troupe that death cannot be faked, but after everyone sees the player die, he springs back to take a bow. He then shows the dagger Guildenstern took was simply a spring-loaded fake that he kept on his person for the show. This leaves the duo with only more questions about reality, as before, death seemed to be the only constant that they could believe in, but now that too is shattered. They both no longer have a basis for reality. This is the only one of many ways that reality and fate are questioned throughout the novel, as it plays on the concept of knowing secondary characters, forced to live in a world that they cannot fully comprehend.
Stoppard wants to ensure that the reader knows that ultimately nothing will change. Shakespeare's Hamlet is still intact. The original intent of the story remains the same. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern will still die in Hamlet, and the story will continue, as if they never learned that something in reality could have ever been out of place. Take, for example, when in the play shown by the tragedians for the royal court in the original Hamlet, they enact a play much like Hamlet itself, a play within a play. Within a play? There are two spies in the play who die at the hands of the other characters. Just before they die, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern notice the two fated spies are wearing the same clothes that they are. The players show the duo their own death, but no action is taken by any of the main characters. The play leaves a feeling of dread inside the readers, at least.
That's enough depressing themes. Now let's do puns of the day.
We take one of the hundreds of puns that you, the audience, sends and find the gems. Now for today's.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are bread.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Ugh. Okay, well, thanks guys. Well, as I was saying, the dread the players play left in the readers leaves them to realize that no matter what either main character does, they are indeed stuck to follow the plot. They're stuck in a script. They're reminded that this is indeed a story still. Act 3 begins with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern on a boat. They're taking Hamlet to England and carrying a letter from King Claudius for the King of England. But the letter actually asks the King of England to have Hamlet killed. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern read the letter and ultimately decide to do nothing. They decide it's not their place to interfere in the actions of royalty. This is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's one and only chance to change the path of the story, yet they ultimately decide to do nothing. But Hamlet hears Rosencrantz and Guildenstern read the letter aloud. And while they are sleeping, he switches the letters. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern arrive in England and present the letter to the king, who promptly has them killed. The final scene of the play is taken directly from Hamlet, in which Laertes announces the deaths of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to the royal court at Elsinore.
Just for the record, I'm John Green. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern attempt to talk to Hamlet and find out what's wrong with him. They ask him a series of questions, and in return get asked questions back. They end up not getting very answers and are left confused. Polonius comes back with the tragedians and the player. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern learn of the play that they will be putting on the following day. The player is upset at Rosencrantz and Guildenstern for abandoning him and his troop at the side of the road. He says that actors are only valid when there's an audience around to see their acts. After this exchange, they discuss Hamlet and what might be wrong with him, while also discussing their uncertainty about their place in the world. The player says that this is perfectly natural to ponder about, but seems to know exactly where he belongs in the world. They cannot reach a conclusion about Hamlet, and the player leaves to memorize his lines, while leaving them the advice to act natural. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern wrap up the second act while discussing death and their thoughts on it. The main characters of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern define themselves also following the format of secondary characters. They have emotions and wants throughout the story, yet they have no idea of where they are or where they're going, or why they want to do it. In the play's first act, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern ask each other what they remember before the beginning of their journal to Hamlet's castle. They can't remember much. This signifies that they didn't have a life before the play began, and they exist only to fill the roles as secondary characters to another man's story. They are so unimportant to the central play, the other characters can't even tell them apart. The main characters of the original Hamlet constantly mistake Rosencrantz and Guildenstern for each other, or was it Guildenstern and Rosencrantz? By the end of the play, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern can't even tell themselves apart. Towards the play's end, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern die, not some flashy, exaggerated death. The stage lights simply fade. Their death is offstage, a disappearance, just as the player said a convincing death should be. By their death, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern accept their fate, but they can't help but wonder if there was ever a point where they could have said no, a point where they could have changed their fate. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is a drama that overall deals with the question of free will, people's actions and their motives. Are they decided by this individual or by some overarching power such as fate or God? Do they have free will? When the characters of the play find themselves questioning their reality, they have to decide to keep living within the boundaries of fate and existence, or try to fight against it, try to exercise their own free will. Tom Stoppard uses instances of foreshadowing to build tension that the reader can clearly see. This foreshadowing is done very plainly and directly so that the reader cannot mistake the drama for deviating from the Hamlet storyline. Scene taken directly from the original Hamlet, showing Rosencrantz and Guildenstern never really had any free will all along. They are only minor characters to a larger story. Stopper's writings on the concepts of fate and free will reflect the existentialist philosophies that grew in popularity following the World Wars. He prompts his readers to ponder headache-inducing questions, like, do we have free will? Is our fate already decided? Do the choices we make actually mean anything? Are we all secondary characters to a story larger than any of us? Who knows? Rosencrantz and Guildenstern don't, do you?